How many times do I need to say this before people actually listen to me? I said it about Fedora's telemetry, and I'll say it again about Mozilla's privacy preserving attribution. Stop trying to do opt-out telemetry, analytics, attribution, opt-out data collection in the FOSS world. It does not matter how you describe your software as privacy preserving, how you describe it as useful for developers or useful for this party or that party. You are dealing with people that have digital privacy as a personality trait. You are going to get pushback anytime you do this. It doesn't matter the merits of your system or if it truly is privacy preserving. You are dealing with people that don't care about that and simply don't like data collection. And Mozilla is the next organization to step on this landmine and suddenly get surprised when it explodes in their face. Now, all of this actually started a bit earlier than a lot of people seem to realize. 2 years ago, Mozilla published Privacy Preserving Attribution for Advertising, which basically goes over a system they're developing alongside Meta called Interoperable Private Attribution, or IPA for short. Basically a way of doing analytics on ad campaigns in a way that isn't collecting every single possible thing about the user and is just providing the core fundamentals you need to know if it's a successful campaign. Mozilla's implementation is a lightweight version, but there is a full 25-page document explaining in very great detail how this system actually functions. But we'll get into some of those details in just a moment. For now, IPA aims to provide advertisers with the ability to perform attribution while providing strong privacy guarantees. IPA has two key privacy-preserving features. First, it uses multi-party computation, MPC, to avoid allowing any single entity, websites, browser makers, or advertisers to learn about user behavior. Mozilla has some experience with MPC systems as we've developed Prio for privacy-preserving telemetry. Second, it is an aggregated system, which means that it produces results that cannot be linked to individual users. Together, these features mean that IPA cannot be used to track or profile users. Now, MPC is a whole field of cryptography, but the general idea is instead of doing all of your operations in one location, you are securely handling that data across many different machines. Now, why are we talking about a 2-year-old blog post? Well, it's no longer just a 2-year-old blog post anymore, because just a few days ago, with the release of Firefox 128, this is now shipping to the users as an experimental trial which you can disable, titled Allow Websites to Perform Privacy-Preserving Ad Measurement. The issue and the reason that everyone is talking about this is you can disable it. It is enabled by default, which is not a great time to do this because about a month ago, Mozilla published Introducing Anonym, raising the bar for privacy-preserving digital advertising, where they announced that they had recently purchased an ad tech company called Anonym. That didn't get a ton of coverage at the time. There were a couple of outlets here and there were some blog posts, but now that you have this happening in Firefox 128, and also that happening a month ago, you have a perfect storm for people to go wild. For a very long time now, Mozilla has marketed themselves with privacy. We care about privacy. Privacy is important. We are the private solution. We are much better than Google about privacy. All of this good stuff. So when you have a situation like this happen, again, people don't actually care about how the system really functions and whether it is actually a better solution. It is seen as data collection, and it is seen as basically bending the knee to advertising companies. Now, prior to this update going public, there were announcements about this happening. The first one being on the mailing list, Intent to Experiment, Privacy Preserving Attribution. This has had 645 views, and I think 4 of those are from me just refreshing the page. So basically no one saw this, but nobody looks at a mailing list. There was also a user-focused blog post, Privacy Preserving Attribution, along with a GitHub explainer. The only one you had any chance of seeing is this one. But most people didn't have any clue this was happening until the update actually went live, until the blog posts from all of the different outlets came out, till the articles came out, till the videos came out. Most people are not checking every single change that happens in their browser, so when something like this happens, they're just suddenly shocked by what is going on. Okay, on a technical level, how does the system actually function? Is it this terrible thing stealing all of your data? Well, here we have a blog post that explains it pretty well. I completely disagree with the author's takeaway about the system, but he does a fairly good job at explaining how it works. Enter Privacy Preserving Attribution. The solution to individual tracking starts by decoupling metric collection from ad networks, and instead only providing them with noisy aggregate metrics that still allow them and their customers to measure the success of a campaign in a relatively accurate way without compromising the privacy of each individual. When you view or click an ad, this is called an impression. This is registered using the save impression function with this information. The type of the impression, whether it's a view or a click, ad networks generally pay out differently depending on the kind of impression, the index of the impression, a unique identifier for the ad itself, and then the site actually doing the advertising. Now, initially, this information is stored locally in your browser profile. Now, generally when you're advertising, there is a concept known as a conversion where you go to the site that is doing the advertising and then you do some sort of action on that site. Say it's a, VPS website, for example. If you spin up a VPS, this is a conversion. Or maybe it's something like you make an account, this is a conversion. This is registered using the measure conversion function, again, being stored locally initially. Impressions are evaluated based on that information, as well as on the target specified during the time of the impression being registered. If there is a match, an array of size histogram size is generated with a 1 at the index position defined by the impression index. That array is sent to a distributed aggregation protocol, a DApp provider, run by an entity other than the ad network. In the case of Mozilla, that is the Internet Security Research Group, the ISRG. So you may know about the ISRG because they are the guys that do Let's Encrypt. Obviously, the ad network is going to want that information at some point. So ad networks and other ad tech providers can request aggregate reports from the DApp provider. Reports are randomized by using differential privacy and other measures. At no point is a collector able to see or interact with individual conversion reports. So all of this information we saw before, which ensures that you are not individually tracked. All they receive is an aggregate that informs them that their ad Y, published on source Z, led X number of people to a positive outcome for their customer over a period of time P. Some amount of noise is also added to the information in order to further strengthen privacy. Now, the big problem with this system isn't the implementation itself. If this was the only possible information that you could get and the ad networks were only able to see the amount of conversions over the amount of time, this would be a fine system, right? Like, I know maybe you don't entirely trust this data being collected. Maybe at some point is going to be mishandled and data leaks. That's a totally reasonable concern. The issue, though, is this system doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it does absolutely nothing in protecting user privacy. You can call it privacy preserving, but it's not preserving any privacy. All it's doing is providing a different means of getting metrics without stopping the other systems. This is strictly less privacy preserving than the system not existing. The data itself isn't that bad, but it's just extra data without fixing any problems. Now, following this going public, there has been quite a lot of discourse about what is being done here. There was a blog post from Privacy Guides. There was a bunch of quite popular Mastodon threads where people were just basically tearing into this. There was some really big threads over on Hacker News. There was even some mainstream coverage from outlets in Germany like Heise. The main issue here is obviously that it is opt-out and it's not actually fixing any problem. But along with this, opt-out is being treated as like this thing that it needs to be to make the system make sense. opt-in is only meaningful if users can make an informed decision. I think explaining a system like PPA would be a difficult task, and most users complain a lot about these types of interruptions. In my opinion, an easily discoverable opt-out option plus blog posts and such were the right option. If you're unable to explain to the user in a short form why a system like this is beneficial to them, why they would want a system like this running on their computer, you shouldn't be doing it. You are a guest on my computer. You don't have the right to just run any code you want just because it's too difficult to explain to the users why it's a good idea. Explain it or don't do it. Again, in the context of ad data collection, I don't even think this is that bad. It's probably the best thing that we've seen. But you don't have the right to go and enable something like this on people's systems, especially when Mozilla talks so much about data privacy. Now, following all of this backlash that anybody thinking for more than 5 seconds would realize was going to happen, Mozilla had to respond. Mozilla's CTO put out a Reddit post that is, quite a read. The internet has become a massive web of surveillance. Very true. And doing something about it is a primary reason many of us are at Mozilla. Our historical approach to this problem has been to ship browser-based anti-tracking features designed to thwart the most common surveillance techniques. A perfectly good thing to do that everybody supports them doing. We have a pretty good track record with this approach, but it has two inherent limitations. First, in the absence of alternatives, there are enormous economic incentives for advertisers to try to bypass these countermeasures, leading to a perpetual arms race that we may not win. Second, this approach only helps the people that choose to use Firefox, and we want to improve privacy for everyone. This system does not do anything about stopping those enormous economic incentives. All it does is provide a bit of data on a silver platter, and all of those other incentives are still there. If you want all of that other individual user data, this doesn't stop that happening. All it does is provide the most easily accessible data directly to the ad networks. Now, all of this stuff in the middle here is just them waffling about how it's actually privacy preserving, how it's this great system, how advertisers like it, how they're working with Meta, and all that great stuff. But moving on from that, the privacy properties of this prototype are much stronger than even some garden variety features of the web platform, and unlike those of most other proposals in this space, meet our high bar for default behavior. There is a toggle to turn it off because some people object to advertising irrespective of the privacy properties, and we support people configuring their browser however they choose. That said, we consider modal consent dialogues to be user-hostile distraction from better defaults, and do not believe such an experience would have been an improvement here. No, the reason why you consider this user-hostile is because every single person would have disabled this feature if it was put directly in front of them, and the only way to get anybody to actually use it in a meaningful sample size is just enabling it by default and hoping people don't realize. There is absolutely no world where asking a user if they want to be part of your trial is user hostile. That is a ludicrous statement to make, and that's just doubling down after everyone's like, this is stupid, stop doing this. Digital advertising is not going away, but the surveillance parts could actually go away if we get it right. A truly private attribution mechanism would make it viable for businesses to stop tracking people and enable browsers and regulators to clamp down much more aggressively on those that continue to do so. This right here is how you fix the problem. You don't fix the problem by just handing some data directly to the advertisers, being like, hey guys, here's the attribution data, please don't collect any more data. Please, this is so bad. We don't want you to do this. The way you actually get this fixed is by talking with the regulators, clamping down on advertisers, clamping down on the data they are allowed to collect. And then then you can implement a system that only gives them very minimal data. At that point, you fix the problem. This quote here from Sarah Jamie Lewis explains my thoughts very well. I don't care how strong you think the privacy properties of a new feature are, and there are legitimate arguments to be had disputing those technical claims. Enabling an experiment like that, by default, is incredibly disrespectful to users, and doubling down is the act that comes across as outright hostile. Going forward, I would not be surprised if any blog post Mozilla puts out about privacy just gets laughed out of the room, and this gets brought up until the end of time. Buying an ad tech company gets brought up until the end of time. I am so very happy that people are finally holding Mozilla accountable and not letting them get away with stuff just because they're not as bad as Google. Guys, Google is so much worse. Mozilla, look, you know, they don't do great things all the time, but look, at least they're not Google. They're in this position where they think they can just do whatever they want, and people are just going to give them leeway for it. That's not how this works. I'm so glad that people are getting annoyed about this. Ignore the change of clothes. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm sure all of you are going to have some interesting thoughts to say about what Mozilla is doing. Try to keep it at least somewhat civil. But anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one over these amazing people over here, check out our Patreon, subscribe, Veripay, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and let me know what your favorite browser is. Something like this.